Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope wherever you are in the world you're having a lovely day. Welcome I suppose to September. It's already September, but that's alright. I'm usually a little slow getting these things up and about. I have set up my bullet journal for my monthly spreads, I suppose would be the best way to put it, such as they are. And I decided this time around to do the pencil drawing part of the video first and then just pick up at the inking and sort of colouring stage, especially considering that the pencil I use is so pale it's sort of really hard to see anyway, so there's no point making you guys watch all of that. So here I'm pretty much just starting off with the monthly, just the cover page, which I've got my Sakura Micron there in a 0.2, and I've been in a bit of a funny mood the last few days where I sort of housebound. Orion's got the chicken pox and we've had a couple of family things going on, so I sort of felt a bit like this little person in the cage resting on the jaws of the dragon, just waiting for her to either push me back up where I belong or open up and go chomp. So this was sort of where my brain was at, in this sort of really wonky cattywampus house. And anyway, it made me smile a bit to sort of think that sort of, I don't know, idea, I guess. And hey, who knows, maybe she's a friendly dragon and she will push me all the way back up to the top. We can hope. So that is my Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen in soft, which I really like. She is almost running out now, and I actually do have a replacement, but she just keeps holding on. The more I use her, the more she fades, but then I'll put her down and put her back in the pencil case and get her out again later, and she's fine. So I'm a bit stubborn. I'll keep using it until it's done with. And I'm adding in the numbers here on the monthly calendar. I had penciled them in so that I knew roughly where they went, but I'd kind of gotten the lining up off, so that's why I was doing them vertically, to make sure that everything sort of lined up together properly. So once I've done with the eraser, then I'm pretty much going to start the coloring process. This journal, as I've said before, doesn't take well to my watercolors, but I also really love using them, so I pretty much just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna do it and see what I can do. This particular spread here, I had to be a bit careful because I had writing on the other side, but then the next page there was nothing on the back, so I could kind of just go for it, which is funny because it wasn't really a high color spread, but that's okay. And I'm just laying in sort of base colors here, a bit of grey on that cliff side to help achieve a bit of sort of tonal sort of light and shade work. And then I didn't know what color I wanted our dragon to be, so I was just sort of filling in bits and pieces on her as I went, kind of making it up as I went along. I sort of thought it might be nice for her to be kind of a night colored dragon, so that, you know, she's coming up out of the sort of shadowy abyss and she might blend in a little bit. So while I was sort of thinking exactly what color tones I wanted to use, I sort of went back to the cliff, and I really wanted to have like a mottled look, which is actually helped by this really thin note paper, because it's not easy to blend anything, whether it's pencils, watercolors, anything on this sort of really cheap paper. But you know, I'm a big believer in working with what I've got, and it's either don't use your favorite suppliers and be annoyed, or use your favorite suppliers and be annoyed. So I decided that I may as well just use them and be a little irritated that they don't work exactly how I'd like to, but in the future, you know, in different notebooks, there'll be different things that you know, my watercolors might work well, and it might be something else that's a struggle. So you sort of take what you can get. My biggest issue here laying color down is that because the way the paper's so thin, it can be really patchy. You can kind of see there the blue looks quite patchy, but one of the great things about watercolor is that if you're patient, particularly with this particular paper, I prefer to let it dry first. So if you're patient and you go back in and you add layers, you can really work with it and make it look like it was meant to be that way. So that's actually why I'm jumping back and forth between the cliff and the dragon and the cliff and the dragon. It's because I'm letting sections dry before I go back in with another layer. So these little patches of green didn't work out quite the way I'd hoped. I was hoping they'd kind of offset the patches of brown and make it look a little bit like the cliff sort of had tufty bits growing out of it. It didn't really. And yeah, anyway, that's fine. I sort of was like, you know, it's okay. It's sort of backgroundy. Your attention in the image should be drawn to the dragon and to the house, and the cliff work is sort of supportive. So I think you get the impression of sort of greenery on the top and brownery at the bottom. Now this here, I'm going in with a slightly darker shade of blue to give the dragon a bit of depth to her. Just, you know, help to highlight where the shadows might be, mark out where the shadows might be, give her a little bit of, you know, you can tell that one ear's behind the other and things like that. And like I said before, I had decided by this stage that she was coming out of sort of the darkness, and it was meant to be deliberately ambiguous whether she was a help or a hinder to the person in the little cage. But at the same time, she is kind of smiling, I think. So, and you can clearly see the cage is balanced on the teeth and not in the teeth. So I think looking back at this now as we're going, I'm going to say that she's a friendly dragon and that she's there to help. So yeah, I decided to add a little bit of the purple tones to the tips of her ears and her nose so that she sort of, you know, had a bit of change in her color scheme, because it was a big thing of blue. And then here I'm going in with into the little cattywampus house and fixing that up and just adding some colors. I didn't want to do sort of brick colored bricks, if you know what I mean, because I had sort of the brown tones in the dirt. So that's why I chose the nice bright red to sort of offset the other colors that we had. And that's, yeah, a little bit of gray shading for the stick figure in the cage, and then that's sort of pretty much it. I wanted to add the white gel pen, but it was still wet, and the white gel pen, look, I've got a Uniball Signo gel pen in white, which I know a lot of people rave about, but I find, it might be just mine, it struggles even when the watercolor is dry. But obviously it won't work at all when the watercolor is wet. So once this pen dries out, or maybe even sooner, once I said dries out, runs out. Once the pen runs out, or maybe even sooner, depending on how much it irritates me, I might actually try the white jelly roll or something else instead. I know a lot of people rave about the Uniball Signo in white, which is why I'm wondering whether maybe I've just got a dud one. But this one really, it struggles, and I can't draw a clean line with it. It sort of skips and scratches, and I have to go back and forth and scrub over and over the top all the time to get something sort of, to get the actual pigment out. Which I suppose is neither here nor there one way or another, if that's the sort of look that you like, but sometimes I do want a clean line when I'm using it. So this here, obviously you've probably guessed by now, is my monthly goals page. I decided to keep it pretty simple, and I just wanted it to look like I had a couple of scrolls sort of open on the page. So I have just got that particular color I'm using now is called Roasted Marshmallow, and it's Designs by Rachel Beth watercolor, and I actually bought it thinking it would be great to use for flesh tones. Like it's a pretty neutral middle color that I can either lighten or darken or change accordingly, but it's also fantastic for paper. So I sort of thought, well, I like to use color when I write, so I decided that I wanted the scrolls to be fairly neutral in their tones. So I just sort of did a border around the square where I would write, and then I was sort of trying to lay on a heavier layer of pigment, which is unlike me actually, to get some depth difference, and it wasn't really working. So I realized I was going to have to go back in and add some more to it, and I sort of thought, oh yeah, well, I'll add a bit of brown. And this brown was really warm, and I thought, oh no, it's the completely wrong color. And once I blended out, it wasn't too bad, but I sort of didn't have exactly the tone that I wanted. And I did take the darker brown that I'd used in the cliff to sort of help, and it looked okay in the end. But yeah, it's very, very dirty paper on the bottom. That's all right. this is what you do when you have a limited range of supplies. This is literally all the watercolors that I own. So I've got to work with what I've got. And I probably could have mixed it with a bit of grey or something to make a different shade before I started, but that is like effort. So I didn't, and I just went with it, and I'm cool with that. So now you can see me here adding in the white, and it's hard to tell in the video, but yeah, you can kind of see how I'm sort of scrubbing back and forth in the one area to get the lines to work. Adding the highlights on the dragon was actually a little tricky because I imagined the light was sort of coming straight down, specifically if she was sort of jumping up out of a pit. So everything had to be on the, like on the top, if that makes sense, from the top down. So I'm filling out my goals page now, flipping back to what my goals were for August and reading through them and seeing whether or not I achieved those, and then adding in a couple of goals that I achieved that weren't actually on August's list, but I was pretty happy with myself for solving them anyway, or achieving them anyway, so I decided to add them on. And then I added, obviously, my goals for this month, which I've got a pretty big list, and normally I don't like to set myself, you know, a massive overwhelming list and freak out about it. But I also find with my goals page, I have a tendency to not look back on it until the next monthly spread. So it's kind of nice to find out, oh, I got that goal and I forgot all about it. So that, in that respect, I don't mind. So now this page is the one and only tracker that I'm doing for the month. And it's actually a tracker for my writing. I think I've mentioned this on this channel before, but I'm an author and I'm currently working on 2 novels simultaneously. And you can see there I actually put a hole in the page because the watercolor hadn't quite dried on the other side. Then my marker went right through, but that's okay. It's fine. So yeah, I'm working on 2 novels at the moment, which is why I've got the 2 books there, because I'd like not to remind myself to keep writing, because I'm writing every day. I'm literally like thinking I'm calling my kids the names of the characters in the novels. Like I'm on it. I'm thinking about it. I'm doing it. But I also do like to be able to look back over time and go, oh, wow, this month I achieved blah. And I have set myself a pretty high goal this month for what I want to get done, which is why I thought maybe a tracker would be nice. So rather than color the 2 books in, because I didn't want the page to sort of end up beige on beige on beige like the last one was, I decided to just give them a bit of a, I suppose it's a drop shadow really, but just a hint of color underneath where the book cover would be, almost like a reflection. And then I used that same toasted marshmallow to just give a little bit of shading at the very edges and in the middle of the book, which you can't really see from here, but I promise you it is there. And then I'm pretty much just going to go in and just fill in the details of the things that I actually want to keep track of chapter-wise and things like that, where I'm up to. So yeah, that is pretty much it from me this video round. Thanks very much for joining me, and I hope that you guys enjoyed watching me work. And you will see me again, I suppose, on the weekend for the next video. Or is it the weekend today? No, tomorrow's Wednesday. You'll see me again on the weekend. So wherever you are, enjoy, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.